Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
We are facing private corporate world government that is usurping control of the planet through incremental private and public partnerships that is basically classical racketeering and fraud. And they make money and consolidate power at each phase of the takeover. And they implement and exacerbate crises. They write white papers on how they do it, how they fund all sides of a conflict, and then basically get the West to bail the country out or the region out, but you're not bailing them out. You're giving money to the globalists and backing it up with your taxes and your military so they can then issue terms to the conquered country or region. And by the way, outside the U.S., this is all well known. One big trick of the globalists is, though, they act like it's an American empire. And the Council on Foreign Relations, the PNAC group, the big think tanks say that so that we get the blame for the corrupt world government while we ourselves are being set up for a fall, being put under debt, being deindustrialized, being demonized, being attacked. Because they're going to bring us out of the dollar age. The question is when. We are being set up big time. So I want to get William F. Jasper's take on where TPP goes, how we fight this, where he sees Russia in all this, and more. Then our London correspondent, Infowars.com editor-at-large, Paul Joseph Watson, will be joining us in studio. Fourth hour will be hosted by David Knight, and we'll be covering Obama as he arrives in Roseburg to feed on the energy of the dead, even though the families have all said don't do it. I was corrected. It's not 7 of the 10 families. All the families are now come out. They were targeted because they were Christians and conservatives and said, please don't use our dead family for your move to disarm us. Please don't do it. But the vampire in chief is going to be arriving and squatting on them and doing that, flying in on his carrion helicopter. TheNewAmerican.com is the news site. It's excellent. You can also subscribe, get the magazines, get them in bulk to wake up friends and family. One of the most effective ways to wake people up is doing that. You can also sign up to get the daily headlines emailed to you there at the top of TheNewAmerican.com. Now, William F. Jasper of the New American Magazine, their editor, joins us. I've been interviewing this fella for, probably 17 years. He's been fighting him, for over 30 years. His parents for 50-plus years. But is it not surreal? I want to go back to the big picture here and then get back into the minutia and where this is all going. To get the Clinton Library documents, as Joseph Farah at the Western Journalism Center did last year, and it's them in the early 90s, mentioning the John Birch Society, mentioning Western Journalism Center, mentioning what if there becomes a new media to challenge us. We've got to instruct all the controlled media to call them conspiracy theorists and kooks and just deny everything exists, deny. We have their own battle plan, and now they still just bleed it out and say, there's no secret treaties, there's no world government. Raising the debt limit doesn't raise the debt limit. Gun crime's up, even though it's not. And their poll numbers go down and down. People, I think, more and more who are thinking really get what's happening. I mean, the success of this show, Drudge showing up Tuesday, and endorsing us publicly. That was a private relationship before that. So many others in law enforcement, federal and state and local, want me to know that they're aware of what's happening and are totally freaked out. The military is incredibly awake right now. I mean, I really think, starting with the John Birch Society, starting with people like Barry Goldwater, Mr. Welsh, we're not giving credit here. They wouldn't want credit. They'd want to defeat the tyranny. But if you read the quotes by Barry Goldwater in the 60s about global government and the Trilateral Commission and CFR, later in the 70s, it's 100% on. We need to let folks understand, because what I found really wakes them up. You guys put a whole issue out, See, We Told You So. And John Birch Society predicts basically everything, and just show the thousands of quotes by you, by patriots, by you 30 years ago, and everybody else accurately charting the future of what we faced, so people will now listen to the next chapter. And that's what I want to get to next. What are they going to do next? What's their end game if we don't stop them?
Well, you put your finger on some very important points. And here's what's important for people to understand. And the key principle on here is power. And concentrating power is always a threat to liberty. When you concentrate power at greater and greater levels and you get out to the global level, then you're talking about a huge threat to human liberty. Centralizing power, concentrating power, internationalizing power on a global scale is a very bad idea if you believe in liberty. And the folks that are promoting this, that have been for over the last 50 years especially, even longer, going back nearly a century to the founding of the globalist movements in the Council on Foreign Relations and the other international circles like that, they know what they're doing. They believe in concentrating power and concentrating it. The more they can concentrate it, the more they can empower their little oligopoly. And that oligarchy then will have political, economic, social, media control throughout the whole planet. And that's where we are rapidly approaching right now. We had a special issue of the New American just a little over a year ago called The United Nations on the Brink of Becoming a World Government. And in that, we have a map of the world, show all of the different adjuncts of the United Nations, the whole United Nations bureaucracy all over the world, economic, political, social, and most Americans are unaware that the United Nations has grown to such huge dimensions and that it has offices and regional and national and global buildings and headquarters all over the world with all of its multitude of agencies. And we show on the map, and it's an interactive map, all of these different agencies. I've been to most of them myself. I've been a correspondent at the United Nations for many years, for nearly 30 years. And it's quite amazing particularly when you go to a third world country and you see everywhere the United Nations. You see United Nations trucks, United Nations tents, United Nations buildings. They are the ones who are in control of all of the refugee centers. They are the ones who are in control of all of the bailout funds through the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank of the United Nations. And that is one of the areas that we've focused on a lot in the past few years, which is the international monetary control.
Sure, and now a few weeks ago,
national currency.
And I want to get to that because the world government's here, but they're not even hiding it anymore. So shouldn't that give us an advantage to force Congress to do something? But what about the Attorney General and the Vice President 2 weeks ago meeting with the UN and saying we're going to basically have the UN come in, take control of our cities police programs, to monitor them and to battle domestic extremists? I mean, I read the text earlier this week of what she had to say. It is so naked, William.
Well, and this is one of many areas. This has been coming for a number of years. We've been reporting on it, that every time there is a riot or a race incident, there are reports made to the United Nations. The same thing now with the refugee crisis. Those have to all come under United Nations control, United Nations monitoring. And according to this next week, watch this coming week, in Geneva, Switzerland, the United Nations is going to be having the World Humanitarian Summit. And there they are going to lay down the basis for normative international law regarding refugees and humanitarian concerns, in which our government, our State Department, representing the Obama administration and allegedly the American people, is going to go on record in favor of moving in toward this international law. Well, if you have international law, you have to have international enforcement, international monitoring. And of course, that means, again, more transfer of power to the United Nations and its various agencies, which is then, the boldest and most bald-faced grab for power is then coming up at the end of November and early December in Paris, France, where the United Nations is holding its climate change summit, which is, of course, calling for international controls over all of the air that we breathe, over all human activities. Everything will have to be audited. If you're going to build a house, build a machine. If you're going to mow your yard.
It's Agenda 21 on steroids. Have you ever seen them moving in unison this bold, A, and then B, are they accelerating their program because they're behind schedule, or are they really doing well?
Well, they're behind schedule on almost every front. We've reported over the decades on a number of the leading timelines that they've put forward, and on most of them, they're years or even decades behind. However, they have been patiently laying the groundwork, and so now they have been able to build up all of these various UN agencies. They've been able to acquire the funds through the United States and the European Union primarily, delivering up most of the funding for this. And so with legions of bureaucrats in the UN bureaucracy and with all the NGOs that are funded by tax-exempt foundations and government grants, they now have a veritable army which works in concert with the establishment news media to push these things forward. And so that when a crisis, a planned crisis like the refugee horde begins, then they have all of their activists, their NGOs, their think tanks, their media.
Creating a fake consensus.
Right. So they can come up with a fake consensus. They can stampede people with a concern over humanitarian issues or things of that nature.
And I agree with you. They're 10, 15 years behind, but now they're trying to accelerate their program, and you can see how they have the cake and eat it too. Flood Europe, flood the U.S. with millions of refugees, destabilize, get more welfare, more government, more regulation domestically, more police state to counter all the ISIS people they admit have come in. Then that's turned around against the indigenous populations or the populations that are more constitutional based. But then they'll hold Europe and the West hostage for hundreds of billions, as they're now saying, to fix the refugee crisis and stop the flow. So they're going to basically extort us now with the third world they control as the world financial collapse accelerates to give in to world government and world taxation, or they'll hit us with billions of people. I mean, you can really see.
Well, I mean, yes, they're going to try to shove as many in here over the next few months as possible. And what they're telling the United States is, it's only a few thousand. But that's what they were telling the Europeans over the last several years. What they plan to do is put seed communities, seed migrants, and as we've exposed in the New American, we don't even know who these people are that are coming here. Most of them do not have identification. They have not been vetted. The FBI, the DMI say that they cannot vet these people. There's no way that they can tell if they're terrorists or not, or even where they're from, what nation they're from. So once they get a few in here, though, they already have the migration refugee network built up with hundreds, literally over 300 groups that are getting money from the federal government, almost all of it from the federal government or from tax-exempt foundations like Soros, Ford, Rockefeller. These various groups like International Rescue Committee, World Relief, U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Lutheran World Relief Services. These groups are raking in tons of money. They have a financial incentive, as well as many of them an ideological incentive, to bring more and more Muslims to the United States. And I'm sure you've covered, as we have, the fact that the Christians who are being persecuted in the Middle East the ones who are really being martyred there are being discriminated against. We have an active policy in our State Department to make it difficult for Christians who really have nowhere else to go.
That's right. Tell us about that when we come back. Absolutely. We'll be back. Stay with us. William F. Jasper is our guest. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com.
The Genesis Communications Radio Network proudly presents The Alex Jones Show, because there's a war on for your mind.
William F. Jasper's with us 5 minutes to the next hour. Then we've got Paul Joseph Watson in studio, our reporters on the ground as Obama prepares to land the next hour in Roseburg, Oregon. If you're a new listener and you wonder what's going on, the British Empire, and this is a simplified 60-second history, and we'll get Jasper's take on it. He's a bigger expert than I am, but this is how it worked. The British Empire, run by private corporations, had taken over probably 40% of the world. The sun never set on it. Some estimates are 50%. You have the Dutch Empire and the French Empire and the Spanish Empire and the Russian Empire, and the American Empire was growing by then as well after the Spanish-American War. It was really when we became an empire. That's admitted by historians. And a lot of the robber barons wanted a corporate global empire by buying off presidents, buying off kings, buying off other companies, consolidating those, using mercenaries in skirmishes with locals, indigenous that didn't want to go along with it. And after World War I, they had League of Nations, and they argued, let's have this big combine and never have a war again. But then, of course, that went into World War II. And the argument is, let's have global government run by corporations that'll stop these wars. But they're the very groups stirring up the wars so they can then point for global government to stop the wars. And they're the ones 9 times out of 10 destabilizing, starting the crisis, or exacerbating it. And so we don't face foreign armies, foreign tanks now. That's only at one small level of it. We face economic warfare. We face a takeover. And it's a cultural takeover as well. And it doesn't give any quarter. And it's a world where the social compact is out the door and where they want to purposely make people poor and highly controlled. Cloward and Pivot is only one aspect of that. We got 3 minutes left in this segment, 5-minute segment after that. I want to try to give you the floor in these little segments, William F. Jasper. But I think really getting big picture for people is the key here. And now that it's all admitted, and I just can't believe how incredibly accurate you guys got it 30, 40 years ago, I think we really have to celebrate the fact that we, the conspiracy theorists, we, the constitutionalists, really did get it right, and that we are the real opposition to this planetary tyranny. And I think people can wake up pretty quick to that and then form the proper opposition.
Well, yes. I mean, the record is there, and we have huge archives of stories on our website that go back 30, 40, 50 years. And so people can judge for themselves. They can say, they were right 30, 40, 50 years ago, and they've called it. They said this is what was going to happen if these things were allowed to take place, and that is exactly what has happened. And the world doesn't look so good compared to what it could be, what it should be. So I think people, we're at a very crucial point in our history now, and if people can tear themselves away from the establishment media and away from their Oprah Winfrey or their Kardashians or whatever they watch or whatever other diversions are keeping them from looking at the hard truths, we can have a massive wake-up very quickly, and people can put the pieces together because there have been some very good people over a long period of time that have been sorting all this out and putting it together for them. And so really now, the information is all there. It's kind of complex. It's very large. But if you boil it down to the key principles, which are, if you want to maintain liberty, then you have to have separations of power. You have to keep as much power local as possible. You have to keep national sovereignty. And all of the forces at work that we're talking about today, that we're discussing, are working in the opposite direction, to take away local control, to take away national sovereignty, to concentrate us in a global government, a global economy. And that's what we have to look at as the...
I agree. Stay there. Do 5 more minutes with us, and we'll let you go. William F. Jasper, 3rd hour coming up. Now we have a 4th hour as well. Stay with us. Infowars.com is the free streams. Spread them with people. Share them with people. And share your local affiliate streams as well.
Visit GCNlive.com today.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Coming up, I've got a video that's really a paradox. You've got a video where the cop lets the guy shoot him and still doesn't shoot him and says, please don't make us kill you. You pull a gun on me, I'm going to shoot you. And then another one where the South Carolina cop shoots the black guy in the back. They've now had to pay $6.5 million. He's obviously been indicted. Yeah, there's 2 extremes. The cop, you don't want to be shooting somebody in the back. And the other cop, you don't want to be letting someone shoot you. I mean, this is just 2 extremes of total insanity. We'll play the video of both. Going back to William F. Jasper, we got about 4 minutes left in this segment. What comes next? How do we fight them? What do we do?
Well, both, for instance, we started out talking about the TPP, the Transatlantic Policy Program, and the big battle is going to be in the House and in the Senate. And right now we have the battle going for Speaker of the House. And it's interesting that Darrell Issa is one of the key people running for Speaker of the House. And that's significant in this particular battle and on many others because although he has a reputation as being a conservative Republican, he is a member of the Transatlantic Policy Network, which is run by the aforementioned Peter Sutherland, the Grand Master of the Bilderberg Trilateral Internationalist Goldman Sachs agenda.
He really is the new David Rockefeller, isn't he?
Yes, and I mean, as we pointed out earlier, he is also not only promoting the TPP and the TTIP, but also the big refugee swarm into Europe after having helped bring together the whole Borderless Europe program while he was working as the president of the European Commission.
Lower the borders, blow up the Middle East, North Africa, bring in the hordes.
Right, so he is a key operative there, and Darrell Issa, whether he gets the speakership or not, is going to be, it's just one of, in our special report that we did on the Transatlantic Policy Network, we listed all the senators. That's called our special article, Trading Away Their Oaths. We pointed out all the senators, such as Thad Cochran, Mark Kirk, Barbara Mikulski, Pat Roberts, Roger Wicker, that are members of the TPN. And then we listed the House members as well. They're all going to be critical votes. And a lot of people think that some of these representatives, because they are conservative Republicans, quote unquote, are going to be reliable votes on this. Need to realize that many of them have been bought off, bribed off, or in one way or another influenced to jump on board this sovereignty-destroying, independence-destroying, globalist program.
Sure, and the media is acting like only socialists don't like it, and it's a leftist issue because Bernie Sanders is against it.
Absolutely. But Bernie Sanders, of course, could flip just as he did on the Federal Reserve bill and sabotage the audit of the Federal Reserve after Ron Paul got a good one through the House. Bernie Sanders sabotaged it in the Senate, and he could do the same thing on this as well. That's what frequently happens. The controlled opposition puts up a fight, takes the center stage so that no other genuine opponents can surface. And then when the critical time comes, they fold and jump to the other side. So we have a real battle before us on the TPP and then following up on the TTIP. A lot of people say it's over now. We can't do it. That's
not true.
Part of the strategy of defeatism.
No, it's just begun. Even if they get this through, look at all these European countries wanting out of the euro. Look at England demanding to get out. Now that we force a debate, admit it's illegitimate, that's the end of it.
Right. I mean, so this is really a house of cards that they've built. They've made it look very formidable, And it is because we keep allowing them to take our tax dollars and work against us to fund our enemies and to fund hostile takeovers.
That's why Rand Paul's right. End all foreign aid. William F. Jasper, great job. We need to get you back up more often. Thanks for the time. TheNewAmerica.com. Read his amazing writings there. Thank you, William.
Thank you, Al.
Folks, those guys right there are the original Patriot heroes, the first Paul Reveres.